My name is Lila Richardson, 62 years old, and I've spent my entire life working hard and making sacrifices for my son, Michael. As a widow who raised him alone after his father died, I've always tried to provide the best I could while maintaining financial responsibility. Everything changed when Michael met Veronica. Suddenly, my sweet boy became a stranger, demanding $150,000 for a luxury wedding. When I refused, he cut me off from my precious granddaughter, Emma. The peace dinner invitation seemed like hope until I walked in and saw 3 lawyers waiting with documents. I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you're dealing with family financial drama, hit that subscribe button and like this video because what happened next shocked everyone at that table. I never imagined I'd be sitting in a restaurant being threatened by my own son. But to understand how we got there, you need to know our story from the beginning. I spent 35 years as a registered nurse, mostly in the intensive care unit at Memorial Hospital. My shifts were long and often grueling. 12 hours on my feet making life or death decisions, comforting families through their worst moments. But no matter how exhausted I was, I'd come home and be fully present for Michael. We'd talk about his day while I made dinner, then I'd help with homework or attend his baseball games when my schedule allowed. Tom, my husband, was my partner in everything. He worked as an electrical engineer for a local manufacturing company, and between our 2 modest salaries, we created a comfortable life. Not extravagant by any means, but we never went without necessities, and occasionally enjoyed small luxuries like summer camping trips to national parks or a special dinner out to celebrate good grades. Everything changed when Michael was 10. Tom had gone for his usual morning jog. He was health conscious and fit, just 42 years old. But that day, a sudden heart attack took him from us without warning. One minute, I was packing Michael's lunch for school. The next, I was answering a call from paramedics. The following weeks passed in a blur of funeral arrangements, paperwork, and trying to help Michael understand why Daddy wasn't coming home. I remember sitting on his bed night after night, holding him as he cried himself to sleep. "It's just you and me now, buddy," I'd whisper. "But we'll get through this together." Financially, we were luckier than many families faced with unexpected loss. Tom had a substantial life insurance policy through his employer, $500,000. It wasn't wealth, but it provided security during those difficult years. I placed most of the money in conservative investments, determined to preserve it for Michael's college education and our long-term security. My lifestyle didn't change much after Tom's death. I continued working my nursing shifts, still drove my practical sedan until it had nearly 200,000 miles on it, and maintained our modest 3-bedroom home in a middle-class neighborhood. Some friends questioned why I didn't treat myself with the insurance money, a bigger house, luxury car, expensive vacations. But financial security meant more to me than momentary pleasures. Growing up with parents who struggled paycheck to paycheck had taught me the value of saving for the future. Michael was a sweet child throughout elementary school, thoughtful, academically bright with Tom's infectious laugh and my determination. But adolescence brought changes. He began comparing our lifestyle to those of his friends from wealthier families. "Mom, why can't we get a pool like the Andersons? Why do I have to wear Target clothes when everyone else has designer stuff? Why can't I have the new iPhone right when it comes out?" Each time I'd explain the difference between wants and needs, the importance of saving, the value of delayed gratification. Sometimes he'd understand, but as he entered high school, the comparisons intensified. "You have all that money just sitting in the bank," he complained once after I refused to buy him a $300 pair of sneakers. "Dad would have wanted us to enjoy it." That stung deeply. Tom and I had shared the same financial values, but Michael was too young when his father died to remember those conversations. To him, my frugality seemed like unnecessary deprivation. Despite these tensions, I remained committed to providing for Michael's future. When he was accepted to Westmore University, a prestigious private college with a top-ranked business program, I was thrilled. The tuition was steep, nearly $50,000 per year, including room and board. But I had planned for this. This was precisely why I'd been so careful with Tom's insurance money. You won't have to take out loans, I told him proudly on acceptance day. Your father and I have made sure of that. For the first time in years, I saw genuine gratitude in my son's eyes. Thanks, Mom. I know you worked hard for this. Those 4 years passed quickly. Michael joined a fraternity, made connections with children of wealthy executives, and gradually adopted their lifestyle expectations. Each time he came home, he seemed a little more dissatisfied with our modest surroundings. I noticed small changes. His casual mentions of expensive restaurants, his friends' frequented weekend trips to vacation homes, the designer clothes that somehow appeared in his wardrobe despite the limited spending money I provided. After graduation, Michael struggled to find work that matched his expectations. His business degree was impressive, but entry-level positions didn't offer the salary or status he'd anticipated. He moved back home temporarily, working as a sales associate at an upscale men's clothing store while applying for corporate positions. During this period, I continued supporting him, covering his car insurance, cell phone, and providing free housing. I had recently retired from nursing after my arthritis made the physical demands too difficult, but my pension, Social Security, and investment income provided comfortably for us both. 6 months after graduation, Michael landed a junior account manager position at a marketing firm. The starting salary was modest, but the growth potential was significant. I was so proud watching him put on his suit for his first day, looking so much like his father that it brought tears to my eyes. "This is just the beginning, Mom," he said confidently. "In 5 years, I'll be running my own department." That's when my sweet boy's ambition seemed healthy and admirable. I had no idea how quickly it would transform into something darker. Michael met Veronica at a networking event 8 months after starting his job. She worked as a luxury real estate agent, came from a wealthy family, and exuded the kind of polished sophistication that seemed to captivate my son immediately. The first time he brought her to dinner at my home, I made my special pot roast with all the fixings. Veronica was charming and complimentary about everything, though I noticed she barely touched her food. "Your home has such character," she said, looking around my living room with its comfortable but well-worn furniture. "It's so cozy and authentic." I wasn't entirely sure if that was a compliment, but I chose to take it as one. What mattered was how Michael looked at her, completely smitten. After that evening, I saw less and less of my son. When I did see him, his appearance had changed. More expensive haircuts, a new watch I knew he couldn't afford on his salary, designer clothes, replacing his previous wardrobe. I worried, but told myself this was normal for young people establishing their identity. I had no idea that Michael's transformation was just beginning, or how dramatically it would eventually tear our family apart. "Mom, we're engaged!" Michael's voice burst with excitement over the phone just 8 months after he'd introduced me to Veronica. I was surprised by the speed but genuinely happy for him. At 28, he was mature enough to make this decision, and Veronica seemed to make him happy. "That's wonderful news, honey. When can we all get together to celebrate?" We arranged dinner at a restaurant far more expensive than I would typically choose, but this was a special occasion. Veronica arrived wearing an engagement ring that I immediately recognized was worth more than my car. The diamond was enormous, the setting elaborate with additional stones surrounding the main gem. "It's beautiful," I said sincerely, though privately wondering about the cost. Michael's salary couldn't possibly cover such a ring. When I hugged him, I whispered, "Are you sure this is financially sensible, sweetheart?" He pulled away quickly, a flash of annoyance crossing his face. "Mom, some things are worth investing in. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment." Throughout dinner, Veronica dominated the conversation with wedding plans already in motion. They were considering destinations in the Bahamas or Hawaii, planning a week-long celebration with multiple events. My stomach tightened with each extravagant detail, but I kept smiling and nodding. "We should all get together soon, you and Veronica's parents," I suggested. "I'd love to meet them." "Absolutely. Veronica replied. Daddy's been dying to meet Michael's family. They'll host us at their country club next weekend. I hope you don't mind the drive. It's about 2 hours from here. The meeting with Veronica's parents, Richard and Margaret Hamilton, was uncomfortable from the start. The country club was ostentatiously luxurious with uniformed staff hovering everywhere. Richard, a successful investment banker, made multiple references to his various properties and recent acquisitions. Margaret, a former beauty queen who clearly maintained an expensive skincare regimen, spent most of the conversation discussing their recent month-long European cruise. "And where do you summer, Lila?" Margaret asked at one point. "I don't summer anywhere," I replied, finding the use of summer as a verb slightly absurd. "I have a small garden at home that keeps me busy during the warm months." "How quaint," she responded with the same tone Veronica had used to describe my home. Throughout the meal, I noticed Michael becoming increasingly quiet, almost embarrassed, as the contrast between our families became apparent. When Richard began discussing wedding finances, Michael quickly changed the subject. "We'll talk details later, sir," he said respectfully. "Veronica and I are still figuring everything out." On the drive home, I gently broached the subject. "Michael, I'm concerned about the wedding plans I'm hearing. Everything sounds very expensive." "Mom, please don't start. This is the happiest time of my life. I just want to make sure you're not going into debt for one day, no matter how special." He gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Veronica deserves her dream wedding. Her friends have all had amazing celebrations. We can't look cheap in comparison." "There's nothing cheap about a wedding that reflects your actual means," I countered. He didn't respond, and we drove the rest of the way in silence. 2 weeks later, Michael called with news. "We found our dream home. We're signing the papers next week." "A home already where?" "Lakeside Estates. It's perfect, Mom. 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, a gourmet kitchen for Veronica, and a finished basement that will be my man cave." I knew Lakeside Estates, an exclusive development where homes started at $750,000. On my next visit to Michael's apartment, I carefully raised the subject. "Honey, I'm thrilled you found a house you love, but Lakeside Estates is very expensive. Your salary and Veronica's combined." "Veronica's parents are helping with the down payment," he interrupted. "And I've been approved for the mortgage. It's all taken care of." But it wasn't. Over the next few months, the loans began. First, it was $3,000 for unexpected moving expenses. Then $5,000 for furniture when their credit cards were suddenly maxed out. Each time, Michael promised to pay me back as soon as the commission from Veronica's big sale comes through, or after my year-end bonus. None of the money was ever repaid. Then came the bombshell. Over Sunday dinner at their new house, which was indeed beautiful but sparsely furnished due to its enormous size, Michael and Veronica formally presented their wedding plans. "We've booked the Palms Resort for next June," Veronica announced, sliding a glossy brochure across the table. I recognized the venue, the most exclusive resort in our region featured in celebrity magazines for its lavish events. "The total budget is $250,000. Michael added casually, as if discussing the weather. I nearly choked on my water. $250,000 for one day. It's actually 3 days, Veronica corrected. Welcome dinner, Friday wedding, Saturday farewell brunch, Sunday. And that's actually quite reasonable for 150 guests at a venue of this caliber." I looked at my son incredulously. "Michael, that's more than most people's homes cost." "Mom," he said with forced patience. "This is standard now for a proper wedding. Veronica's cousin spent over $300,000 last year." "But what does that have to do with your wedding? Your finances aren't the same as her cousin's." Veronica excused herself to take a phone call, leaving Michael and me alone. That's when he finally revealed the real purpose of this dinner. "Mom, we need your help with the wedding costs. Veronica's parents are contributing $100,000 and we're asking you to match $150,000. The room seemed to spin. $150,000, Michael, that's simply not possible. Why not? You've been saving Dad's insurance money all these years. What else would you use it for? My retirement, for one thing. I'm not wealthy, Michael. That money plus my pension and Social Security is what I live on. You live frugally. You don't need that much. I took a deep breath. There's also Emma's college fund that I've been building. Emma was my 4-year-old granddaughter from Michael's previous relationship. Her mother had little involvement in her life, and Michael had full custody. I adored that little girl and saw her twice a week while Michael worked late. I'd been setting aside money for her education since the day she was born. Emma's college is years away, Michael dismissed. We can worry about that later. That's not how financial planning works, I said, feeling my temper rise. You of all people should know that with your business degree. His face hardened. Just say it, Mom. You don't want to help me. You've always been selfish with money. The accusation stung like a physical slap. Selfish, I paid for your entire college education. I've given you loans that were never repaid. I've supported you financially your entire life. And now, when I need you most for the most important day of my life, you're refusing. Veronica returned, sensing the tension immediately. Everything okay? My mother, Michael said coldly, doesn't think our wedding is worth investing in. The evening deteriorated from there. By the time I left, Michael was barely speaking to me, and Veronica's earlier warmth had completely evaporated. As I drove home, tears blurred my vision. How had my sweet little boy transformed into this entitled stranger? And what would this mean for my relationship with precious little Emma, who had no idea about the financial war brewing in her family? After that disastrous dinner, I spent weeks researching average wedding costs, trying to determine what would be a reasonable contribution. According to everything I read, the national average was around $30,000, still a significant sum, but nowhere near the $250,000 Michael and Veronica planned to spend. I consulted with my financial advisor, reviewing my accounts and calculating what I could realistically offer without jeopardizing my retirement or Emma's education fund. We settled on $30,000, a generous gift that represented about 10% of my annual living expenses, but wouldn't damage my long-term security. With this figure in mind, I invited Michael to lunch, hoping a public setting might keep emotions in check. I chose a quiet cafe near his office, arrived early, and rehearsed what I would say. When Michael arrived, he was already defensive, checking his watch repeatedly to indicate his limited time. I've given a lot of thought to your wedding, I began, and I've looked carefully at my finances. I can offer $30,000 toward your celebration. His expression darkened immediately. $30,000, that's it. It's a substantial gift, Michael. Far more than the traditional contribution for the groom's family. But nowhere near what we asked for. Veronica's family will think we're pathetic. I'm not concerned with what Veronica's family thinks, I said gently. I'm concerned with making a responsible decision that honors your special day while acknowledging financial reality. The reality is, you're sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars that you're hoarding for no reason. I maintained my composure. I've worked my entire adult life, including night shifts and holidays away from you, to ensure financial security. That's not hoarding. It's responsible planning. Veronica's going to be devastated. If Veronica truly loves you, she'll understand that a wedding is about commitment, not spending beyond your means. He stood abruptly. You know what? Don't bother with the $30,000. If you can't fully support us, we don't want anything from you. Michael, please. In fact, maybe it's better if you don't come to the wedding at all. It would just be awkward explaining to everyone why my mother couldn't be bothered to properly contribute. With that, he walked out, leaving me sitting alone with my untouched sandwich and a broken heart. That evening, Veronica called. I answered hopefully, thinking perhaps she would be the voice of reason. I just want you to know, she began without preamble, that your offer was insulting. My parents are deeply disappointed in your lack of commitment to Michael's happiness. Veronica, please try to understand. No, you need to understand. This wedding is happening with or without your blessing. The only question is whether you want to be part of it or not. $150,000 or nothing. Before I could respond, she added, "And just so you're clear on what nothing means, it includes your time with Emma. Since you can't support her father properly, we're not comfortable with your influence in her life." The threat took my breath away. "You can't keep my granddaughter from me." "Actually, we can. Check the grandparent rights in our state. They're quite limited." After that call, everything changed. My twice-weekly visits with Emma were canceled. Michael stopped answering my calls and texts. When I drove to their house, no one answered the door, though I could see movement behind the curtains. I reached out to David, Michael's friend since high school, who had always maintained a good relationship with me. "I don't know what to tell you, Mrs. Richardson," he said uncomfortably when I called. "Michael's been acting different for months now. The house, the cars, the wedding, it's all way beyond what he can afford. I tried talking to him about it, but he just gets defensive. Says I'm jealous of his success." "Do you know if they're in financial trouble?" David hesitated. "I shouldn't be telling you this, but I overheard him arguing with Veronica about credit card debt. Apparently they're carrying balances on 6 or 7 cards. The minimum payments alone are killing them." This information didn't surprise me, but it deepened my concern. Michael was digging himself into a financial hole that would take years to escape. The wedding proceeded without me. I spent that day alone in my garden, weeping as I pulled weeds and dead-headed flowers. Through social media posts from mutual friends, I saw glimpses of the extravagant celebration. Ice sculptures, a 10-piece band, custom cocktails, and Veronica in what appeared to be a designer gown that likely cost more than my car. I wondered how they had managed to fund everything without my contribution. Had Veronica's parents covered the difference? Had they gone further into debt? The questions haunted me as I faced week after week without contact from my son or access to my beloved granddaughter. Emma's 5th birthday approached, and the thought of missing it crushed me. I sent a card with a small gift to their home, but received no acknowledgement. I called and left tearful messages that went unreturned. My sister Susan, watching me sink into depression, finally intervened. "This isn't right, Lila," she insisted. "You need to fight for your relationship with Emma." "How? They won't even speak to me." "Then we need to get creative. That little girl needs her grandmother." With Susan's encouragement, I began researching grandparent rights, learning that while limited, there were circumstances where courts would intervene to maintain established relationships like mine with Emma. But before I could take any legal steps, something unexpected happened. 3 weeks after the wedding, my phone chimed with a text from Michael. "Would like to make peace. Dinner tomorrow at Angelo's 7 p.m. Just us." My heart leaped with hope. Perhaps the wedding stress was behind us and Michael had come to his senses. I responded immediately, confirming I would be there. That night, I barely slept, imagining our reconciliation, the return of my sweet boy, and reunion with my precious Emma. I even wrapped a small gift, Emma's favorite book that we used to read together, as a peace offering. I arrived at Angelo's, an upscale Italian restaurant, 15 minutes early. Nervous, but hopeful. The hostess led me to a private room in the back, and as the door opened, my optimism evaporated. Seated at the table were Michael and Veronica, looking tense and formal. Beside them sat 3 people I didn't recognize, all in business attire, with folders and documents arranged neatly before them. My son didn't stand to greet me, didn't offer a hug or even a smile. Instead, he gestured to an empty chair across from them. "Mom, these are our attorneys," he said coldly. "We have some papers for you to sign." I stood frozen in the doorway, the children's book clutched in my suddenly trembling hands. The scene before me was so far from the reconciliation I'd imagined that my brain struggled to process it. Attorneys, I finally managed. I thought this was a family dinner. Please sit down, Mrs. Richardson, said the woman in the center, a sharp-featured blonde with thin-rimmed glasses. We have a lot to discuss. I moved mechanically to the empty chair, setting Emma's book on the table beside me. Michael glanced at it but showed no reaction. What is this about? I asked, my voice small even to my own ears. The blonde attorney slid a thick document across the table. We've prepared papers to dissolve the trust established with your late husband's insurance proceeds and transfer the remaining balance to Michael and Veronica. What trust? I was genuinely confused. That money is in my personal accounts. A constructive trust? Interjected the older male attorney to her right. While not formally established as such, the funds were clearly intended for family benefit, including your son's. I looked at Michael, bewildered. What are they talking about? For the first time, he met my eyes. Dad's insurance money was meant for both of us, not just you. You've been controlling it for years, using it as leverage. It's time for that to end. Controlling it, I used it to put you through college to help with your down payment. A fraction of what should have been mine, he interrupted. The rest you've hoarded, refusing to help when we really needed it. The third attorney, a younger man with a carefully groomed beard, spoke up. We've calculated that approximately $380,000 remains from the original insurance payout plus investment returns. Our position is that half of that sum rightfully belongs to Michael as Thomas Richardson's son and heir. I felt lightheaded. They wanted $190,000, more than half of everything I had saved for my retirement and Emma's future. This is absurd, I said, pushing the document away. That insurance policy named me as the sole beneficiary. Tom and I made that decision together as a couple. You were expected to use it for family needs, Veronica interjected. Not just yourself. I have used it for family needs. My voice rose slightly. Michael's entire education, his first car, the down payment on his first apartment. Mrs. Richardson, the female attorney cut in smoothly. Let's cut to the chase. We're prepared to file suit for constructive trust if necessary. But that would be expensive and unpleasant for everyone. Michael and Veronica are offering you a simple solution. Michael leaned forward. Sign the papers tonight and you can see Emma again. Regular visits, holidays, everything back to normal. And if I don't, I whispered, though I already knew the answer. Then you'll never see your granddaughter again, he said flatly. Grandparent rights in this state are minimal. Without our cooperation, you have no legal standing. Veronica nodded. It's entirely up to you. Sign and be part of our family, or refuse and remain cut off. The room seemed to close in around me. I couldn't believe my son, my sweet boy who I'd nursed through chickenpox, taught to ride a bike, comforted through his first heartbreak, was threatening me this way. I need to use the restroom, I said, standing abruptly, and I need time to read this document. The restroom is down the hall, Veronica said. Don't take too long. We've ordered appetizers. In the small, elegant bathroom, I leaned against the marble counter and tried to steady my breathing. My reflection showed a pale, shocked woman I barely recognized. How had we come to this? Where had I gone wrong with Michael? I thought back to his childhood, trying to identify the moment when seeds of entitlement were planted. Was it when I worked double shifts to buy him the gaming system all his friends had? When I dipped into savings for the senior trip I couldn't really afford? Or was it something deeper? Had I failed to teach him the values of gratitude and responsibility that my parents had instilled in me? With shaking hands, I pulled out my cell phone and called Sarah, my closest friend, and a retired legal secretary who had worked for a prominent law firm for 30 years. They're trying to legally strong-arm you, she said after I explained the situation. Don't sign anything, not one single page. The moment you put pen to paper, they've got you. But Emma, Listen to me, Lila. If they're willing to use that child as a pawn now, they'll do it again and again. This won't be the last demand. Give them this money, and they'll be back for the rest within a year. Deep down, I knew she was right. This wasn't really about Tom's insurance money or Michael's inheritance. It was about power and control and respect. My son no longer respected me or the sacrifices I'd made. He saw me as nothing more than a resource to be drained. What should I do? I asked. Stall. Say you need your own attorney to review the documents. No reasonable person could object to that. They're not being reasonable. Then you need to be strong, stronger than you've ever been. I thanked her and hung up, splashing cold water on my face. As I dried off with a plush hand towel, a memory surfaced. Michael at 7 looking up at me with Tom's eyes saying, "When I grow up, I want to be brave like you, Mommy." What had happened to that little boy? And what would Emma learn from parents who used her as leverage against family who loved her? With renewed determination, I returned to the private dining room. The attorneys were sampling wine while Michael and Veronica spoke in hushed tones that ceased abruptly when I entered. "Have you made your decision?" the female attorney asked. "Yes," I said, taking my seat. "I will not be signing these documents." Michael's face flushed with anger. "Then you've made your choice. You won't be seeing Emma again." "That's where you're wrong," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I've been recording this entire conversation on my phone, which is legal in this state as a one-party consent jurisdiction. I now have documented evidence that you're attempting to coerce me financially by threatening to withhold my grandchild." The attorneys exchanged alarmed glances. "Additionally," I continued, "I'll be consulting with my own legal counsel about grandparent visitation rights, which are indeed available when the court determines it's in the child's best interest to maintain an established relationship like the one I have with Emma." "You're bluffing," Veronica hissed. I removed my phone from my purse and played back the last exchange, including Michael's threat. The older male attorney winced visibly. "Here's my counteroffer," I said, gathering Emma's book and my purse. "Drop this entire matter now, or I'll pursue every legal avenue available to me, including reporting this attempted coercion to the proper authorities. I suspect the Bar Association would be very interested in how these attorneys conducted themselves tonight." Michael stood, his face contorted with rage. "You won't get away with this. We'll fight you every step of the way." "I'm sure you'll try," I replied, my heart breaking even as I maintained my composure. "But remember this. I raised you alone after your father died. I worked multiple jobs to give you every opportunity. I've fought for you your entire life. Don't think for a moment I won't fight just as hard for my relationship with Emma." I walked out with my head high, but once inside my car, in the darkened parking lot, I collapsed against the steering wheel in sobs. The finality of the rupture with my son hit me like a physical blow. There would be no easy reconciliation, no peaceful resolution. I had stood my ground, but at what cost? As I drove home through tears, I realized that the answer to that question would depend not just on the legal battle ahead, but on my own ability to rebuild my life in the face of this profound loss. The only certainty was that nothing would ever be the same again. The morning after that devastating dinner, I called in sick to my volunteer position at the hospital gift shop and made an appointment with Jennifer Parker, an attorney specializing in elder law and family matters. Her office was modest but professional, with credentials displayed alongside family photos showing 3 generations. "What you experienced," she said after hearing my story, "was elder financial abuse, or an attempt at it. Unfortunately, it's increasingly common even among families without previous issues." "I never imagined Michael would do something like this," I said, still struggling to reconcile the son I raised with the man at that restaurant. "Financial desperation changes people," Jennifer replied kindly. "From what you've described, Your son and daughter-in-law are living well beyond their means. The wedding likely pushed them to a financial breaking point. What about Emma? Can they really keep her from me? She leaned forward, hands clasped. Grandparent visitation rights vary by state. Here, the courts generally recognize established relationships when they benefit the child. You've had regular, meaningful contact with Emma since birth. You've provided childcare, have a bedroom for her in your home, and can demonstrate a consistent role in her life. We have grounds to petition. Will it be difficult? I won't sugarcoat this. These cases can be challenging. The law generally favors parental decisions, but given your situation, especially if we can demonstrate that cutting you off was done punitively and not in Emma's best interest, we have a reasonable case. I left with paperwork to complete and a $2,500 retainer fee that made me wince but felt necessary. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about protecting my relationship with my granddaughter and standing up to manipulation. Jennifer filed our petition for grandparent visitation the following week. As expected, Michael and Veronica responded aggressively, hiring an expensive family law firm known for their combative approach. The financial strain of legal fees added another layer of stress to an already painful situation. During this period, I discovered a support group for alienated grandparents that met weekly at a local community center. Walking into that first meeting, I felt a strange mixture of comfort and sadness. Comfort in finding others who understood my pain. Sadness that there were enough estranged grandparents to fill a meeting room. The holidays are the hardest, said Marion, a silver-haired woman whose son had cut contact after marrying a woman who disliked her. That first Christmas without my grandchildren, I could barely get out of bed. How do you cope? I asked. One day at a time, she replied, and by fighting, legally respectfully but persistently. Children need their grandparents even when their parents are too angry to see it. Through this group, I formed friendships with people who truly understood. Gloria, a retired teacher whose daughter had cut her off over perceived criticism, became particularly close. We met for coffee outside of group meetings, attended lectures on family dynamics together, and checked in daily during our lowest moments. The mistake I made, Gloria confided, was isolating myself in shame. I didn't tell friends what was happening because I felt like a failure as a mother. Don't do that, Lila. Maintain your connections. Taking her advice, I began cautiously sharing my situation with close friends. The support I received was overwhelming. My friend Patty, a talented photographer, offered to document with pictures all the special moments and activities Emma and I had shared, creating a portfolio for court. My neighbor Thomas, a retired psychology professor, wrote a character reference emphasizing the stability and nurturing environment I provided. Meanwhile, through David and other connections, I learned more about Michael and Veronica's financial situation. The wedding had indeed been as extravagant as social media suggested, with final costs reportedly exceeding $275,000. Veronica's parents had covered their promised $100,000, but the remainder had been financed through a combination of personal loans and credit cards. They're underwater, David told me during a discreet coffee meeting. The mortgage, car payments, credit cards, it's all too much. Michael's been asking colleagues for loans. He even approached our boss about an advance on his bonus. This information confirmed what Jennifer had suspected. Their attempt to access my savings wasn't about principal or inheritance rights, but about solving immediate financial problems of their own creation. 2 months into the legal proceedings, we received notice of a court-ordered mediation session. These mandatory meetings aim to resolve family disputes without a formal hearing, though either party can reject the mediator's suggestions. The mediation took place in a bland conference room at the county courthouse. Michael and Veronica arrived with their attorney, a sharp-dressed woman with a reputation for aggressive negotiation. Michael wouldn't meet my eyes. Veronica stared coldly from across the table. The mediator, a former family court judge, outlined the purpose of our meeting. We're here to determine if there's a path forward that serves the best interest of the child while respecting parental authority. For the next 2 hours, we presented our positions. I emphasized my established relationship with Emma, providing photographs cards she had made for me and testimony from neighbors who had witnessed our close bond. Michael and Veronica argued that my financial manipulation made me an unhealthy influence and that Emma hadn't asked about me since visits stopped. Children often don't verbalize their sense of loss, the mediator noted, especially at Emma's young age. That doesn't mean the relationship isn't significant to them. When financial matters inevitably arose, Michael's attorney presented their constructive trust theory again. The mediator, to his credit, seemed skeptical. The inheritance claim seems separate from the visitation issue, he observed, and potentially inappropriate to link them. As the session progressed with little movement toward resolution, an unexpected development occurred. Veronica received a text that clearly upset her, and after whispering with Michael, they asked for a brief recess. When we reconvened 20 minutes later, a new person had joined their side of the table. Veronica's father, Richard. "I apologize for interrupting," he said formally, "but I felt it necessary to join this discussion." Richard's presence changed the dynamic completely. He asked pointed questions about the timeline of events, occasionally frowning at his daughter's responses. When Michael mentioned the family money, he believed he was entitled to. Richard's expression hardened noticeably. "If I may speak privately with my daughter and son-in-law," he finally requested. The mediator agreed, and they stepped outside while Jennifer and I remained in the conference room. "Something's shifted," Jennifer observed quietly. When they returned, the atmosphere had changed palpably. Veronica looked chastened, Michael resigned, and Richard firmly in control. After discussion, their attorney began. "My clients are prepared to offer limited visitation, 4 hours every other Saturday, supervised initially with a review after 3 months." It wasn't ideal, but it was a start. After consulting with Jennifer, I accepted the offer as a preliminary step. The mediator drafted the agreement, which we all signed before departing. In the hallway afterward, Richard approached me while Michael and Veronica spoke with their attorney. "Mrs. Richardson," he said quietly, "I want to apologize for my daughter's behavior. Margaret and I raised her with every advantage, and I fear that created expectations that aren't serving her well in adulthood. When I learned they were threatening to keep Emma from you over money, I was deeply disappointed." "Thank you for intervening," I replied, surprised by his candor. "I've also instructed them to drop any pursuit of your savings," he added. "That was inappropriate and won't happen again." As he walked away to rejoin his daughter, I felt a complex mixture of relief, vindication, and lingering sadness. The agreement meant I would see Emma again, but under strained circumstances, and my relationship with my son remained deeply damaged. "It's a start," Jennifer said, squeezing my arm gently. "Focus on rebuilding your bond with Emma. The rest may follow in time." I nodded, hoping she was right, while preparing myself for the possibility that some bridges once burned cannot be fully rebuilt. My first reunion with Emma after months of separation was scheduled for a Saturday morning in late October. We would meet at a neutral location, a popular indoor playground called Adventure Zone that offered private party rooms. Michael would remain present throughout the visit. I arrived 30 minutes early, nervous as a teenager on a first date. I'd brought a small gift. Not the book from the restaurant confrontation, but a new stuffed elephant to join the collection she loved. I'd dressed carefully in the purple sweater she always said made me look like a pretty grape, and tried to prepare myself for any reaction from joy to indifference. When they arrived, Emma spotted me immediately across the reception area. For one heart-stopping moment, she stood still staring, as if trying to place me. Then her face bloomed into a sunshine smile, and she broke free from Michael's hand, running toward me with arms outstretched. "Grandma, you came back." I knelt to receive her hug, breathing in the strawberry shampoo scent of her hair, fighting back tears. "I missed you so much, sweet pea." "Where did you go? Daddy said you were too busy to visit." Over her head, I met Michael's gaze, seeing discomfort and perhaps a flicker of shame. "I was never too busy for you," I said carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups have complicated problems that keep them apart for a while, but I'm here now." The 4 hours passed in a blur of playground activities, shared pizza, and Emma's non-stop chatter about kindergarten, her new friend Zoe, and how she had lost her first tooth. Michael remained distant but civil, occasionally checking his phone, but otherwise keeping his attention on Emma. When it was time to leave, Emma clung to me. "Can I go to Grandma's house? My special room is there." "Not today, sweetheart," Michael said firmly. "Maybe another time." "Next visit, I'll bring pictures of all the flowers we planted together," I promised her. "They've grown so much, just like you." As they walked away, Emma looking back over her shoulder to wave repeatedly, I sat down heavily on a bench, emotionally drained, but deeply grateful. She hadn't forgotten me. Our bond remained intact. Over the following months, our visits gradually lengthened and restrictions loosened. By Christmas, Emma was allowed to spend one overnight at my house every other weekend. My special Emma room, with its butterfly wallpaper and bookshelf of favorites, welcomed her back as if she'd never been away. Michael remained formal during drop-offs and pickups, but the sharp edge of hostility had softened to awkward politeness. Veronica rarely appeared, sending Michael alone for the exchanges. Through David and mutual acquaintances, I learned that significant changes were unfolding in their lives. The housing market had cooled considerably, affecting Veronica's real estate income. Then in February came more dramatic news. Michael had lost his marketing job in a company-wide restructuring. This development coincided with visible changes in their lifestyle. The luxury SUV Veronica had been driving was replaced by a more modest sedan. Social media posts about expensive restaurants and weekend getaways abruptly ceased. They canceled their country club membership. One unusually warm March evening, while Emma was building a fairy garden in my backyard, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. I opened it to find Michael standing alone, looking tired and noticeably thinner than at our last exchange. "Mom," he said, his voice lacking its recent formality. "Could we talk?" We sat on the porch swing that Tom had built decades earlier, watching Emma arrange pebbles and moss in careful patterns below. "She looks happy," he observed quietly. "She always is when she's creating something," I replied. "Just like you at that age." He nodded, then fell silent for several moments. "I've been meaning to tell you. We're selling the house." I wasn't entirely surprised, given what I'd heard. "I'm sorry, Michael. I know how much Veronica loved that place." "We never should have bought it," he admitted. "Or the cars, or the designer furniture, or—" he gestured vaguely, "any of it." "What will you do?" "We found a 3-bedroom rental in Oakwood. It's nothing special, but it's close to good schools for Emma." He hesitated. "And I've started interviewing for new positions. Nothing at my previous salary level, but steady work." "You'll land on your feet," I said. "You always were resourceful." Another silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken regrets and accusations. Finally, Michael turned to face me directly. "I didn't come here for money," he said firmly. "I want to be clear about that." "I didn't think you did. But I did come for advice." The admission seemed difficult for him. "Everything's fallen apart so quickly. The job, the house, our savings. Veronica and I are fighting constantly. I don't know how to fix it all." The request touched me deeply. My son, despite everything, still valued my counsel. "There's no quick fix, Michael. Financial recovery takes time and consistent effort." "That's what the credit counselor said." "You're seeing a credit counselor, that's a positive step." He nodded. "Richard's idea. He's been surprisingly helpful since everything imploded. Less judgmental than I expected." We talked for nearly an hour. about budgeting strategies, potential career paths, and the emotional challenges of financial setbacks. I offered suggestions but was careful not to lecture or criticize past decisions. This wasn't the moment for, "I told you so," but for rebuilding trust. When Emma finally tired of gardening and came to join us covered in dirt and beaming with pride, Michael surprised me by asking, "Would it be okay if we stayed for dinner?" That simple meal, nothing fancy, just my homemade lasagna and salad, marked a tentative new beginning. The conversation remained carefully neutral, focused on Emma's school projects and my volunteer work. Neither of us mentioned the wedding, the legal proceedings, or the restaurant confrontation. Those discussions would come later if our fragile reconnection strengthened. As spring progressed into summer, Michael's circumstances continued evolving. He secured a position at a smaller marketing firm, less prestigious, but with reasonable hours and stability. He and Veronica downsized dramatically, selling designer items and luxury goods to pay down debt. Emma adapted to these changes with the resilience of childhood, seemingly more concerned about keeping her favorite stuffed animals than losing the expansive playroom of their former home. My relationship with Michael gradually improved, though remnants of tension surfaced occasionally. Veronica remained distant, but no longer openly hostile. Most importantly, my time with Emma returned to its previous frequency and warmth, with holiday celebrations and special occasions once again shared. The experience transformed me in unexpected ways. I became more involved in my community, volunteering with financial literacy programs for young adults and joining advocacy efforts for grandparent rights. The friendships formed through my support group deepened, creating a network of understanding peers who had weathered similar storms. I also began traveling more, modest trips I'd always postponed until someday. A week exploring the coastal towns of New England, a painting workshop in Santa Fe, a literary festival in Savannah. These adventures nourished parts of myself that had been neglected during decades of caregiving and work. At 62, I found myself in an unexpected new chapter. Not the retirement I'd planned alongside my son's family, but a life rich with purpose, independence, and carefully protected relationships. The most profound change, however, was internal, a shift in how I understood love and boundaries. For too long, I'd equated love with unlimited giving support without conditions. The painful confrontation with Michael forced me to recognize that true love sometimes requires standing firm, even when doing so risks relationship. Emma turned 6 that September. At her birthday party, a modest celebration at their rental home, I watched Michael interact with other parents, noting his relaxed demeanor and absence of the status anxiety that had previously dominated his social encounters. Later, as we cleaned up while Emma played with her new toys, he said quietly, "Thank you for not giving up on us." "I could never give up on you," I replied. "But I needed to stop enabling behaviors that weren't healthy for any of us." He nodded thoughtfully. "I'm starting to understand the difference." That understanding, the crucial distinction between supporting and enabling, between generosity and lack of boundaries, was perhaps the most valuable inheritance I could offer my son. Far more important than any financial legacy was this lesson in living authentically and responsibly. If you're facing similar challenges with adult children or financial manipulation from family members, please remember that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for genuine relationships to thrive. Standing firm doesn't mean you failed as a parent or that you love conditionally. It means you respect yourself enough to expect respect in return. I'd love to hear your experiences with family financial pressures in the comments below. Have you had to make difficult decisions to protect your financial future? How did you maintain important relationships while setting necessary boundaries? Please share your wisdom. Subscribe to hear more real-life stories and like this video if it resonated with your own journey. Remember to share with anyone who might be facing similar challenges. Sometimes knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for being part of this community where we can speak honestly about life's most difficult moments.